All right, Minister Gould, thank you so much for being here. Canadians know very little, well, probably about foreign policy generally, but polls from your department have shown that Canadians really don't know a whole lot about the Feminist International Assistance Policy, FAPE. Is that a problem, and why might that be a problem?
Well, look, I think there's so much good work that Canada does around the world that Canadians can be really proud of. And so I think it's a good thing for us to be able to talk about this work, for Canadians to be able to hold governments to account and to ensure that, we're doing the things that are important to us as Canadians and living our values, but most importantly, to really be proud of the work that we're doing. And so I think part of my job as minister is to talk to Canadians about the Feminist International Assistance Policy and our development programming more broadly.
I can see a sort of a direct line being drawn from Canadians know very little bit about this program to an opposition leader in a campaign saying, I'm going to take billions out of this program because voters don't seem to know about it, therefore they can't value it. So there's those in the development community, they think this could make any overseas development program vulnerable if we don't do enough talking about it.
Well, certainly, David. I think that, particularly those who care about international development and care about Canada's role on the world stage were shocked when Mr. Scheer announced that he was going to cut international assistance by 25%. I'd like to see a world where our international assistance is not partisan. It's not a political thing. And in fact, we can look to allies like the United Kingdom, where regardless of whether you're a Conservative, Labour, or a Lib Dem, you support their international assistance budget. And I think that, throughout Canadian history and successive governments, both Conservative and Liberal, we have tended, at least for the most part, to be broadly supportive of Canada's role in the world stage and the role that we play in helping our world's most vulnerable and lifting people out of poverty. And so, I, along with many Canadians, was very disappointed to see that. But I also think that, as you mentioned, it speaks volumes to the fact that we need to do a better job of talking about what it is we're doing. And in fact, I think a lot of Canadians are actually doing that work, because this isn't about the government doing work abroad. 25% of our development assistance is actually given to Canadian NGOs and Canadian organizations that go do that work. And even people who aren't participating in those organizations, I think of church basements across the country, right, that are the first to act and first to mobilize when disaster strikes around the world.
And of course, I think most Canadians do have a charitable streak, a Good Samaritan sort of streak, and they would justify sort of ODA on that basis. But it also seems to me that as a middle power, unlike, say, Britain, which has a large military, as a middle power, our overseas development budget is the way we can project Canadian values and have some influence around the world.
Absolutely. And when you travel around the world, and particularly when you speak to foreign governments of developing countries, they point to the really specific projects that Canada funds. So for example, I think of the government of Tuvalu that talks about the $80,000 that we put into a radio transmitting system that allows them to take pictures of someone if they're injured on one of their islands to send to their main hospital to determine, does this person need to go to the main hospital or can they be treated locally? And so, we're doing all of these really great projects that are making really important differences for people around the world, but also it's something that Canadians care about. And, when we talk about Canadian values, we get to express those and show them around the world as well.
Now, I know you're starting in your portfolio. This is, you're still getting all the facts and figures, but certainly you've probably heard from the development community that we still need to do more, that as a percentage of the size of our economy, we're a wealthy country, and we should be able to afford to do even more. And I wonder if that's something that you will try to press for with your colleagues around the cabinet table.
Well, I think that's a message that's heard loud and clear, particularly for those who care about development. But I also think that we have to work together. So those that care about development, I need to work with you to talk to Canadians, because it also has to come from Canadians. And so part of understanding how Canadians see our development budget means that, the last election and this report make very clear we need to do more to talk to Canadians. So this is something that Canadians see as important, because it's part of, as you mentioned, being a good Samaritan and a good world citizen, but it's also important for Canada. So in our fight against global climate change, making sure that developing countries are also climate resilient, in our fight for a more stable, secure, and peaceful world, right? If we can work with host countries that host large refugee populations, this this is also in Canada's best interest. And so we need to do a better job of communicating to Canadians, and then we can go from there.
The polls I referenced and some of the public opinion work that the department had done before your arrival, I assume was in preparation for, okay, here's a plan, here's some steps we can take, and I wonder if you've had a chance to talk to your officials yet about some of the specific ways to raise the profile specifically of the Feminist International Assistance Policy.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm about 2 weeks on the job right now. And so, I have told stakeholders and I have talked to officials about the fact that I do want to make communicating with Canadians a top priority and sharing the really good work that we're doing and the stories of the people that we're impacting and benefiting. And also really recognizing that this is everyday Canadians that is actually doing this work and enabling it. And so really for Canadians to take pride and to feel part of what Canada's doing on the world stage.
Minister Karina Gould, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, David. My pleasure.